You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. Stop being so hard on yourself. Stop having these crazy expectations that you should be in a different place than you are right now. Where you are isn't bad. What you're going through isn't bad. It may not be ideal, and you are allowed to shift that and want more and move towards it, and you will have that. You've got this. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. This week, we are going to be talking all about burnout, perfectionism, that relentless voice that makes us feel like we are being so hard on ourselves, that the expectations are so high, and how the heck we can really cope with that, slow those voices down, maybe even stop them altogether. How does that sound? For those of you who don't know, my name is Felicia. Not only am I a recovering perfectionist, but I am here just to share a little bit of my own journey with you, a little bit of what I've been working through, what I've noticed happening in the world around me, how I'm trying to respond, what I'm trying to take away from it. And I do this all in the hopes that it meets you exactly where you are right now, gives you that familiar voice that feels like a friend, helps you feel like you're not alone in whatever you're going through, maybe gives you a little bit of inspiration or some solid takeaways so that you can be more empowered in your life, but especially in your self-love and self-care journey. The part that we all want, but we also kind of have to figure out how to not get sucked into the fake parts of that, or to fool ourselves into more and more avoidance of what really matters. I know that's something that I've had to take a close look at, especially recently. So let's do it. Let's dive into today's episode. One of the reasons that I really wanted to talk about burnout today is because I've had quite a bit of experience in this area over the last, who hasn't felt like complete exhaustion and burnout over the past 2 years, or at least some level of it? I think COVID kind of put us into a very, exhaustive state, fight or flight. Our lives changed, our worlds changed, lots of fear, still can be lots of fear from COVID. Just depending on how you're dealing with it all, or how you feel the world is dealing with it or not dealing with it. But I also have just been so up close and personal dealing with burnout in my own life, because how it all affected me is for the past 8 years, I've been running a wedding photography business. And right now I'm trying to transition out of weddings and into a new chapter in my life. And I had to do that. I came to that revelation through hitting incredible burnout. I took a month off away from my business in December, which I thought would be perfect and more than enough. And instead, it led me to the knowing that I have to transition, that it's time to transition. And it's never just because of one thing. It's how one thing affects another thing, affects things that are already going on for us, or things that we've maybe are already predestined in our life, if you believe that. I love weddings. I love photography, and I love serving people and being able to be that calming voice for them on their wedding day that they can trust to take and capture beautiful pictures of them. I absolutely love that I have an amazing team of individuals that have helped me with this process over the past few years. We're a wonderful team. They're incredible photographers too. And I'm very proud of what I've built. And yet at the same time, there's just so many things along the way that I can see now from this position that have led me to this moment where I realize, okay, this has never been the end all be all for my vision for myself for the future. In fact, if I'm very honest about it, and I think it's okay to be honest because I don't think this affects any of my work or my service. I think just being honest about it is that I came into wedding photography because it was the only way to make money at the time that I knew of, to be honest with you. In fact, I was just talking to my mom about this the other day, this revelation that I've had recently that photography, while I really enjoy it and I have fun with it, it's not the same for me as it is for a lot of the same photographers on my team, where they've had this passion since they were little kids and they love having a camera in their hand so much and they just can't stop. I do have a very strong passion for photography, but my biggest passion is for people and for understanding people and for being able to, in college, my degree is actually in theater, and it's specifically in directing and production development. And my favorite thing as I started to really work through my degree was in feeling like I could be that person that could translate to the actor exactly how they needed to shift their acting style, their verbs, their actions, their body language on stage in order to convey the story that I knew they actually wanted to tell. I feel like I could be kind of like that person that can unlock what people can't see. And so when I started doing photography, I really just picked up photography in college as a way to make a little bit of side money, because I had so many actor friends who were like, hey, you have a camera? Like, do you want to take my headshots, or do you want to take our engagement pictures? And then I kind of kept that going just as a little bit of a side hustle. And then I found my way into working for a photography studio because of one of my best friends. And then that just opened up a whole new world. And I ended up just following that track because I really wasn't that plugged into what else I want to do with my life. Probably the thing I was most plugged into eventually is that I really felt this need to work for myself. And so I took the path. And it's been an incredible path. It's been a wonderful journey. It has led me to the most incredible relationships and friendships and client conversations and beautiful weddings to experience in the most privileged moments. And I'm still, this last year that I'm shooting weddings, I am more present than ever, knowing that this is the transition out of wedding photography. At least I'm pretty sure that's the path. It's hard. I haven't made a formal announcement about this because, well, one, I don't want to scare anybody of my client base, but two, that feels extremely final and like not maybe the best business move. Eventually, maybe it'll get there. But I think I'm coming to grips with it myself. And also I'm just trying to be very present with it. Like I said, every single wedding I go to, I'm able to walk into it with this renewed calmness, this grounding energy that I can be present in a way that I've never kind of felt before, with this frenetic pace that builds and builds and builds with weddings. But going back to the burnout piece, I've also really, really felt a shift in my body experiencing this kind of work. It used to be that, I'd go to shoot a wedding and the next day I'd be a little bit tired, be slower to move the next morning. But in 12 to 16 hours, I would bounce back and I would feel rejuvenated and all of that. And now I've noticed, like, what I give at a wedding, it takes me days to get back to myself after I shoot a wedding. It takes a good 4 or 5 days for me to feel like I've got energy again, like I haven't been like hit by a truck. And the reason I share that is because I feel like if you're anything like me, or if you have this sneaky habit in certain areas of your life, you immediately start to say, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I just hack it? Like, why can't I just, pull myself up by the bootstraps and just deal with it? Like, you don't need to be tired. You don't need to be a baby. You're being lazy, or you're being, I'm so hard on myself, and the negative thoughts start. And I don't know why we do that. I don't know why we think that coaching ourselves negatively like that is actually going to help us at all. In fact, it's when I started to realize, I'm like, what if my body is telling me an important message here? What if my body is telling me it's time for a change? It's time to let go of this work that you've used to make money for the past, several years, almost a decade. And it's time to transition. It's time to find a new way to help people. Well, there's a million reasons that I wouldn't want to listen to that voice, because it's scary. But I also believe in doing things that are really scary. And I believe in listening to your body. I believe in tuning deeply inward. And when I listen to those voices deep within, I can feel how exhausted I've been and how much the past year in particular has taken a huge toll on me, and how through the past couple years, especially coming out of the pandemic, I'll just say that in certain lines of work, I don't think mine's the only kind, but in my line of work, I've had at least 12 to 18 months out scheduled. And that has been kind of a limiter in my life, in the sense that, I couldn't plan a random vacation with cheap tickets to California in, the third week of July, because every weekend of my life, or every part of my life, is filled with events. And this became even more apparent in 2020, because I had already some 2021 events already booked pre-pandemic. And then all of a sudden the 2020 weddings started rolling backwards, and then micro weddings happening. So people wanting to get married in 2020 have us there, but then I do their big wedding again in 2021. And so everything just, it became a lot. It became holding all of these unknowns, trying to be extremely strong, trying to give lots of new advice, just be that guiding force that I always want to be for my clients. And I had to put even more of my own personal life on hold, because if I wanted to make any big changes, if I wanted to have any freedom, if I wanted to change my life, I had to do so within the bounds of my prolonged schedule. And there was this voice inside of me that started to feel like I can't make the decisions that I need to for myself because of what I was giving to other people through my work. And when you do this for long enough, when there's a need inside of you that you're not able to satisfy, that you're not able to meet, I think usually that starts out with a general denial of that little voice. It's like, no, I don't really need that, or that would be nice, but it's a luxury. It's not really that important. But then that voice keeps getting a little bit louder, a little bit more persistent. And then you flat out just start ignoring that voice. Like you start holding, like that little voice comes up and you start holding your breath. Like, I'm going to just hold my breath, compartmentalize that, put that in the back room way over there, not to deal with it, and see how that goes for me. And then the voice finds its way out of that room until all of a sudden you start feeling like you're running from it. When you literally start noticing examples of your life, why that thing is important to you, why it matters, why it's coming up, and yet you're literally running from it. You're trying to, and that creates a source of anxiety inside of you, or at least it did for me. So here I am. I was just telling my therapist that I feel like it's just been transitional year after transitional year after transitional year, these really big transitions. Like 2022 was a transition in my business into the new normal. And then 2021 was this transition of, in my personal life, of my partner, my boyfriend, my spouse, becoming my business partner, my employee, this huge transition with our business. And then it was a transition of, how do you work with a partner who is sick, and the transition of our household and our lives changing around his illness. And then now I'm also deciding that this is the year that I'm going to transition my business into what. Another reason I haven't had a formal announcement is because there's still a lot of unknowns. And when I first thought, okay, back in January and March, I'm like, okay, things are transitioning, I'm going to figure this out. It felt like I had so much time to figure it out. But now, June is this week, the 6th month of the year, and I'm starting to feel a little bit of this urgency, like I have to figure it out. And so if you've ever felt that in your life before, that you have a lot to figure out and you feel like you don't have time, well, then this episode is also for you, because I know exactly how you feel. And the one thing that I will say, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we talk about actual strategies for burnout, actual ways to slow down and encourage those relentless voices to stop. That's going to be the heart of today's episode. But the one thing I'll say right now is you're exactly where you need to be. You know exactly what you need to know. And the fear voice that says, I have to figure this out right now, is the voice of fear. And it is the voice that is terrified of failure, that feels like if you don't figure it out right now, that you're going to lose everything. And that is catastrophic thinking, right? And I say that with love. And I say that like I don't have a mirror right in front of me, but I should have a mirror right in front of me, because that is the biggest revelation that I've had in this past week, is that impending fear of the clock is a fear of failure. And it is black and white thinking that says, if I don't figure this out now, I will never figure it out. And that is just simply not true. So, we'll dive more into that, I promise. But first, I do always like to open up the beginning of each podcast. I know I'm a little bit longer than into the beginning at this point, but with a little bit of an astro check-in. And one of the reasons I'm excited to share this right now is so deeply tied to this entire conversation, which is that today is the new moon in Gemini. And I'm recording this on May 30th. So if you're listening to this tomorrow on May 31st, know that it's a little bit after the new moon, but you're still in the new moon energy. And when a new moon happens, and in the 2 weeks that follow the new moon, this is a wonderful time to start to set intentions, to set your goals, and to make things happen in your life. And this one is extra powerful and important because last month we had the huge influence of 2 different eclipses, a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. And during eclipses, it's kind of like we have to put our hands up and just say, all right, how is the world going to shift? It's kind of like there's like, I don't know. I just thought of like, it's almost like a energetic earthquake is happening in our life. So we don't set a bunch of intentions during an earthquake. We just do our best just to make our way through it, see how the world changes, see how our world changes, see what comes up inside of us, and then we can readjust. And here we are now at the precipice of a new moon, new lunar cycle, new 28 days moon cycle ahead. And we get to root ourselves into new intentions. And we get to be influenced by this Gemini energy. Gemini is a mutable air sign. It is good at change. It is good at going with the flow. Now, that is not to say that every Gemini loves change, because let's just say I know a lot of Geminis. Some of the favorite people in my life are Geminis, and many of them would say that they struggle with change, that they hate change even. And there's some behavior there that I would say, from being up close and personal with some Geminis, that there are, nobody loves change all the time, right? Because we like to have control and change can be unpredictable. But in general, Gemini, as the zodiac sign, does love options, and it loves variety, and it loves things being diverse and to have its hand in many different pockets. Is that a phrase? That's probably not a phrase, but I'll keep that in there in case it makes you giggle. It likes to do a lot of different things. It loves versatility. It's an air sign. It also loves to learn about very many things. It loves to research. It loves to communicate. It loves to share ideas, loves to talk. In fact, I always usually can peg down somebody that has Gemini in their chart just by somebody who loves to talk. Although there are Geminis that are actually just excellent listeners too, that they can kind of fool you a little bit with how good of a listener they are. So all that being said, how can we use these Gemini qualities to influence the new moon experience that we're going to have this month, especially if you're not a Gemini or you're not up close with this energy? I think the most important thing that you can do is really root yourself in one of the key slogans of Gemini, which is, I think. And you're going to have to spend some actual time doing some good reflection this month. In fact, the new moon ritual that I suggest comes not only with a little bit of self-reflection, some questions to consider, but it also is like create a vision of the roadmap ahead of you. If you think about it, it's been 4 months since we were last in an air sign. Air signs are very good at being visionary, at seeing the big picture, at brainstorming, at intellectualizing, and especially Gemini, it's very logical. So coming off of this lunar eclipse last month in water and earth signs, now it is our time to say, okay, we've been through a lot. We're almost halfway through this year. It is time for us to kind of take a clear look at what's happening right now. And with lighthearted energy, Gemini is lighthearted, let's just start to brainstorm our way forward. We are not sitting here as though it is doomsday and we have to solve every big problem in our life. That is not the energy. The energy is, what's the path forward? What in my heart is talking to me? How can my mind rationalize this? How can I use them both together, my heart and my mind, to start to move forward? And you can remember, you get to pick what the road looks like. It does not have to be a long, straight path. It could be, all right, to be honest with you, I see a little bit of a curve ahead and there's lots of trees around this corner and I'm not sure what's past that, and that is also okay. It could be a path through a bunch of brush in a forest. It could be a short path. You do not have to have all of the answers. Has anyone ever told you that before? Because if not, I will be that voice that tells you. You can live a life of intention and mindfulness and still not have all of the answers. But you can have or start to have some good questions for yourself that might become more and more helpful for you. And Gemini is a wonderful sign, a sign ruled by Mercury, which is communication, information, travel. So just remember that this is a great time to be asking those questions, to be curious, and to start to paint that new vision for the road ahead. And I do have a 2-page new moon ritual specifically for this month's new moon. It is in the lunar guide that I create every month. It goes out to all of my Patreon members. It's like a 10-page guide that kind of serves as a guide for the entire month ahead. And then it has this new moon ritual in it and lots more info on the new moon and just how to work with all of this energy in a very basic and relatable way. But if you're not a member of our Patreon yet, you can also just join our email list. You can go to abitfromwithin.com/free guide, sign up for our newsletter, and you can get a copy of this month's guide for free. So check that out. Like I said, even if it's a couple days past the new moon that you're listening to this, you can still go and check this out. There will be plenty in there. And, I do think that this new moon will be off to a little bit of a slow start because we are in the final days of this Mercury retrograde. So truly, anytime this week that you can root your intentions and start thinking about this, even if you take a several-day process where you're just mulling over some of these ideas for the future, some of the questions that you have for yourself, things are going to change. Momentum's going to move forward. You're going to start to notice a really big energetic shift this week and in this month ahead. I almost guarantee it. So let's talk more about perfectionism and burnout. But first, a quick break. Okay, so what is burnout? Burnout is a form of exhaustion that comes from being constantly swamped or mentally overloaded or physically overloaded. It happens when you have been on for so long that you can't do it anymore. Your battery gets completely drained. It's like if you were an iPhone, you turn off. And we are not just people that can get plugged back into a charger and just fuel right back up, especially depending on what we've been going through. Like I mentioned earlier, I think that living the past few years through this global pandemic in this world that we've been living in with everything that has come up collectively, I think that many of us are living with a level of burnout and exhaustion. And I say that a little bit tentatively hoping that this podcast finds the right listeners who can understand what I'm saying, because I know not everybody gets it. And that is also exhausting. It is exhausting to try to make people who resist that knowing inside of you. For those of us who are empaths who are saying, this has been a lot, to have people who will literally look you in your face and tell you that you're crazy or you're a baby or you're whatever, that does not make any of this any easier. And so I think this revelation for so many of us that we're burnt out, it is becoming more and more evident. And I've even seen more and more people on social media talking about burnout and becoming these burnout specialists who are going to give you a 7-day course to fix your burnout. I mean, you do you. Choose the path you need to take. But I will say that I think that coming out of burnout is a slow process. And I think that's something that many of us struggle with because we expect everything in our worlds to be fast. And we feel like fast is good and slow is bad. And so anything that can give us results quicker, that can get us back on our feet, that can keep us moving as though nothing is wrong, then those things are good. And if we have to struggle, if the answers come slowly, if we have to wait, if we have to take our time, if the process is slow and requires rest, then we feel like that is the last option we would want. And so I think the first real step to facing any kind of burnout that you're feeling, and maybe the word isn't even burnout, maybe it is depression, or it could be exhaustion, or it could be anxiety. You know the word, the one that feels right. I think this advice is probably applicable to all of these things. The first thing you do is you change the expectations that you have of yourself, of the amount of time that you're allowing yourself to recover from this. And that switch right there is going to make a huge shift for your life, because you may not even realize that you have this expectation that you have to get back fast and that you have to rebound and that you have to bounce back. Of course, you want to feel better. I feel that too. I want to feel better. I think we all do. We want to get ourselves out of this place. But what happens is we take that very clear knowing that we want out, we want change, and we want to not feel this way anymore. And then that true, genuine desire also covers up what I was just talking about of all of those subconscious beliefs around the right time it has to take. And we have to separate those two things. We have to be willing to say, I want to feel better. I want to get out of this. I want to feel strong and rooted and energized and loving life. I want to feel those things. And I am willing to take care of myself and do so in a proper way, in a way that I can actually allow myself to recover, to regain strength. Okay, so we're going to separate those two things. And with that, then becomes this deep permission that it might take a while. And I want you to really wrap your head around this. I want you to picture however long you've been going through this, you're going to already take away any of those negative thoughts around, wow, look how much time you've wasted, or what have you been doing with yourself, or how come you didn't get help sooner, or figure this out, or get a job, or find a hobby, or find a doctor, or whatever that thing you play on repeat in your head is, that the reason why that you've been stuck or that you will stay stuck, you're going to let that go. You're going to stop putting that negative view on it, and you're going to say, for whatever reason that I have been on this journey, it is okay. I am learning something from it. I'm not going to diminish what I've been through, what I've experienced. And I'm going to repeat to myself as many times as I need to that it is okay to be where I am. And as I continue to recover, I'm going to continue to remind myself that it is okay to be where I am. What if I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be? So that's how I'm going to live. I'm going to live that as though right now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I think that just saying that kind of self-talk to yourself, that will begin to shift that narrative. And you also have to start to just picture the pace being slow. So as you start to look to the future, you're not immediately picturing yourself tomorrow doing all of the things that you used to be able to do, or all of these things that you feel that you should expect yourself to do. For example, I think that a lot of people love to be busy and love to feel on the go. So they picture themselves when they're living their best life. They picture themselves going to different stores or going to different little parties or getting together and trying new restaurants and doing all of these fun things that really fill their soul. But then they're exhausted and they're burnt out. And so they spend the entire weekend on the couch and feeling bad about it. They beat themselves up for resting. So that is not what you're going to do. You're going to start to picture a roadmap for yourself that includes giving yourself what you genuinely feel like you need right now. So if you need rest, if you know you need downtime and you need quiet, I want you to start to picture the next, let's just pick a short amount of time, like 3 or 4 weeks. Does that feel like a short amount of time to you? That's the beginning time frame I want you to start to work with. And I want you to picture for the next 3 or 4 weeks, how are you going to give yourself consistent opportunities for downtime and rest, if that is what you're needing right now. Now, I'm going to come back to some examples of this because I do feel like I have to get to the next part of this quickly before you start thinking of those things. And the next piece of recovering from burnout is self-awareness and a healthy dose of honesty. Because I think what a lot of people do, and this is not to blame yourself, but is when you get into a survival mode, you're just doing anything you can to survive. So you end up laying on the couch and scrolling on your phone or playing a game or zoning out, playing a video game, just doing something. And it's not a bad thing, but you do it. It helps you feel better once. It helps you zone out. It helps you compartmentalize. And so you do it all of the time. And you end up living in these alternate states of being where you're just either beating yourself up or you're doing that thing that makes you forget everything else. And I don't think that that's the path forward. And I don't think that you think that's the path forward either. But are there elements of that path that are right? And I think the answer is yes. Are you allowed to rest? Are you allowed to zone out? Are you allowed to play a video game if that makes you happy, or do a project, or have coffee with a friend? Yeah, there are plenty of things that you are allowed to do that are low key, that you've been doing. We're not going to deny ourselves those things, but what we have to do is we have to get very aware as to what we're doing in avoidance and what we're doing that is actually helping us. And we have to fit this new strategy into the next 3 or 4 weeks ahead. So what you're going to do is you're going to begin to take a good hard look at your life. And if you're very type A, you can actually time block. If you're not type A at all, then I just want you to maybe identify what is something that gets a lot of your time. And remember, you're not showing this to anybody, so you don't have to lie to yourself. Is it that recliner that you sit in for a couple hours every day? Is it, for me, I'm addicted to my phone and I spend too much time scrolling sometimes. That is a thing that I've done. What is it for you? What is that thing that gets a lot of your time? And I just want you to rate on a scale from, 0, not helping you at all, to 10, helping you tremendously. On a scale from 0 to 10, how much is it helping you in your current state of being? Is it helping you get closer to where you want to be or how you want to feel? Or is it just not really moving the needle that much? We're not going to go as far as saying that it's not helping at all or keeping you away from what you want. We're just going to say it's not helping you get closer to where you want to be. And then I want you to begin to think, are there any activities or self-care practices or self-kindnesses or little things that I could do for myself, are there any of those that I could start to embed into my schedule? And this does not have to be big things. I think this is where a lot of people go wrong, is they think I have to completely throw out all of the time that I'm doing the other thing that I really love, that I choose to do every single day, and I have to replace it with all of these things that are good for me, self-care practices. So I'm going to meditate, I'm going to do yoga every day, and I'm going to join a new class, and I'm going to schedule time with my friends, and I'm going to... No, that is not what you're going to be doing. We're going to start to pick small, tangible, doable self-care practices. So I'll give you an example from my own life that I almost feel silly to admit to you, but I swear it's been really helping. I have made it a commitment to myself that at least once or twice a day that I come and sit in my closet, exactly where I'm recording this podcast, and I have some crystals in here, and I have some of my spiritual decks, and I have the singing bowl, and I sit here and I put the singing bowl in my hand, and I just do the singing bowl, and I tune in. And I just allow myself to breathe. And I allow myself to notice what I'm feeling. I even have my journal here, so I'll journal in it. Sometimes I do this in the morning, and actually a lot of times, because I'm a little bit more of a night owl, I do it before I go to bed. Sometimes I spend 2 minutes here, and sometimes I spend like 30 minutes here. And I've been doing this consistently for the past 2 weeks, just honoring what I need that day and remembering I feel really good after I spend this time in here. Another thing that I've been doing is whenever I get in my car, so if I'm running late, I can't do it on the way there, but usually after I finish that errand, when I get into my car, before I start driving back home, I'm just like, okay, I have this moment. I can take a deep breath. I can really just ask myself, what do I need right now? Do I need 5 deep breaths? Do I need a good silent scream? Or if you're in a car and you're not, right next to somebody in a parking lot, usually I do this while I'm actually on the road. Sometimes I'll just scream out loud. It's a way to release energy. Or, when you're in your car, you can take that moment. Okay, I'm getting ready to go into the store and run errands or grab groceries. But first, I just want to root myself and say, I am safe. Everything is happening exactly as it's supposed to. I am divinely protected. Guides, if there's anything that I need to know, please make it very obvious for me right now. Or if you're very religious, you can spend that time in prayer. Praying doesn't have to be something you only do at church on Sundays, right? You can, or only at night before you go to bed. You can do it in your car. You can find, communion with the divine whenever it feels right for you. And sometimes just building in a little bit of that into your schedule can make a big difference. So for you, I just want you to be thinking of that right now. How can you do things that are actually going to start to move that needle in how you feel for yourself? And the final thing that I do think will help, and maybe this isn't so doable when you're in the real trenches of the burnout, but for those of us who are in the phase of the burnout where we're still doing stuff, we're still living our life, but we're also spending copious amounts of time in avoidance or just not living the life that you want to live. The next thing I will say is change up your space, get organized, reevaluate. Now, I'm not saying going out and spending, thousands and thousands of dollars and changing everything, right? But sometimes little changes can go a long way. So maybe it's time to reevaluate your house. Maybe you do a walkthrough. You grab your phone or your notepad or whatever, and you walk through your house and you say, how do I want to use this space? What are the things that I really enjoy? What are the things that are driving me crazy or that could use a little bit of reorganization? I recently did this because during the summer, I love to spend time outside. And so for the past couple years that we've lived here, we've slowly gotten more patio furniture and we've spent some time out there, but I just felt like there needed to be a change, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And so slowly I kind of just started to problem solve. I'm like, I think we actually need a table out here because our back patio, we had like this little couch thing and a couple of Adirondack chairs, and it was fine, but I was like, we can't eat dinner out here like this. Or all last summer we ate dinner, we just hold it on our laps, which is also fine, but I just wanted it to be a little different. And so then I thought, well, I love these Adirondack chairs. What if I put them in the front, on the front porch? And I'd literally just never thought of that before. And so I finally did it. And I have this like Jolly Buddha that sits in front of our house. And so I started reading more up on the Jolly Buddha and like how to use it properly. And so I didn't realize that the Jolly Buddha, I believe, and I'm not an expert at this, but I believe it's actually supposed to be facing your entrance. And I didn't know that. So I had it like facing as you walk into the house, like facing out. And so I actually had to move it to fit the Adirondack chairs out there. So I put the Adirondack chairs out there and I moved the Jolly Buddha so it's kind of facing the entrance to the house. And then I thought, okay, something is going right here. Maybe I need to run and get some like flowers to put out here. So Dave and I went to get some flowers, and we found this kind of little side table that we could put between the Adirondack chairs. And, the whole thing cost like $40. It wasn't a huge investment. But I went home and I put these things out here, and then the entire vibration of entering our house just completely changed. And we spent so much time out there this weekend just sitting in the Adirondack chairs, drinking some tea and chatting, and it felt so good. And it was so quiet outside. And I had this remembering, I'm like, my soul needed this. Like, I needed a new space here. I needed it to feel different. And now anytime I'm leaving or coming from the house, I walk through this beautiful little area that has this great vibration, and I never would have had that if I had just kept living how we had been living. It wasn't a huge investment. It didn't take a lot of change. It just took me saying, I feel like something needs a shift here. And so this is a beautiful time of year to do that for you as well. If there is something in your life or a way that you want to use your space or something that you've been needing, how can you give yourself that reasonably? One of the things that I struggle with is that sometimes when I start to think of what I want, I immediately go to the next phase of my life. I think we need a bigger house. If we want to start a family, we need a third room, or we each need our own space, and we need this. And I would really want a space that I can do yoga. I need like a little yoga area. And this house needs laminate where we have carpet, and the patio is facing the wrong direction, and blah, there's so many things. But I think that you have to find that middle road where you say, how can I make what I have right now work for me? How do I get my needs met? What little tangible shifts can I make in my life that can make a big difference? Because it can. And it is hard to see that when you're burnt out. So overall, those are my tips. Stop being so hard on yourself. Stop having these crazy expectations that you should be in a different place than you are right now. Where you are isn't bad. What you're going through isn't bad. It may not be ideal, and you are allowed to shift that and want more and move towards it, and you will have that. You've got this. It may take longer than you have been preconditioned to expect, and that can be okay too. What if you're exactly where you need to be? Give yourself time for honest reflection. Find a way to add in just a little bit more of those real, tangible self-care practices that can move the needle in how you feel. And they don't have to be the examples that I said, right? Like, it can be anything you want in any place of your life that works for you. It could be, I'm going to take the 5 minutes after I get out of the shower just to put on this expensive, luxurious lotion that just makes me feel good in my body. It could be swapping out podcasts for some of your favorite music anytime you're driving to somewhere. It's hard because we have all of these different levels of things. We have the things that we know are good for us that we love. And then we have these ways that we kind of numb out that we also love. And so just be aware of that and try to find a little bit more of choosing the things that are actually good for you and weaving them alongside of the things that you love, that you just love, that maybe don't move the needle, that aren't the best things for you, but are still comforting and restorative for your heart and your soul, and that help you cope with where you are in your life right now. And then be willing to change where and what you can. So for you, that may not be your physical space like I was mentioning. It may be organizing your schedule in a different way, or negotiating some new boundaries in your relationships, or saying no to something that you've been saying yes to that is just draining you and it's not doable anymore. Sometimes that is change too. And like I began with talking about Gemini, most of us don't love change, but this is the season of change. So what happens when you embrace change and you get to pick change for you? All right, I think we will end there today. And every week I like to end with a card drawing, and I wasn't sure. So I got this new deck. It is so cool. It is the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit deck. And so these are all animals. And I kind of told myself, I'm like, I don't know how this will be as applicable for a podcast, but I really want to use this deck today. So I'm going to pick an animal for us all. And if you love this animal deck, if you think it worked well, will you just let me know? Like, send me a DM or find my social media or something like that and shoot me an email. However you can get a hold of me. There's so many ways to get a hold of me. Let me know if you like this animal deck, and I'll put it into the rotation here. So I'm just going to shuffle that deck of cards, and we'll see what the universe wants to contribute to our conversation. What animal will help us? This is the Bee card. So one of the things that I love about this deck is that it actually has the symbol for earth, water, fire, or air at the top. It also has a fifth category for like spirit animals. And so the bee is from the air element animals, which, remember, Gemini, air sign, that's kind of divine too. Okay, this says earnest, hardworking, and democratic. The bee personality is a delight to be around, especially when there's a team project on the horizon. Bees love to work steadily and thoughtfully until the final task is complete. They are sensitive creatures, aware of many subtleties at once. Since they're artists at heart, they usually add creative details to the overall vision. For the most part, they have a bustling, joyous personalities until they're too tired from all the work. Then they gripe, and then they sting. So when in balance, bees are content, active, vibrant. When out of balance, overworked, and annoyed. And to bring into balance, you need a mini vacation. Oh my gosh. I'm smiling so big right now because, first of all, I never thought of how well that description of a beast accurately describes Gemini energy, which I just think is beautiful on the day of this Gemini new moon. But I also love that we're talking about getting overworked and being burnt out, and how a lot of times we do become annoyed and we become run down and we become frustrated. And that can just be this tireless cycle where we don't enjoy working and we're not vibrant and we're not active and content. And that's where so many of us want to be and feel like we should be. And so I love this idea. And, obviously I did not prescribe a mini vacation to any of us, but maybe that's some of what we need. And maybe some of the things that I shared today can either act as that mini vacation, or if you do take some time off for you, if you can just consider some of those elements as you find the time to rejuvenate, to recover, and to find your way back to yourself. Because, we all deserve to be content and active and vibrant in our lives. We do. We deserve that. And sometimes, depending on what we've been going through, it's going to take more or less time and or change to get there. That will do it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have not already subscribed to the A Bit From Within podcast, please do so. And if you love the podcast, but you'd love to listen without any advertisements, then you can join our Patreon group. We have a $3 a month membership where you can get ad-free episodes of the podcast, as well as that lunar self-care guide I was sharing about earlier. But if you prefer to listen wherever you love to listen to podcasts, please know that is a-okay with me. In fact, if you have the time to just leave me a nice review or tell other people why you love this podcast, why it resonates with you, that would be so helpful because it would help us continue to grow and get into the hands of this like-minded community. Thank you again for joining me today, and until next time.